What up? Are you awake? Sorry, I can't hear you. Are you up and ready, folks? What up? Okay, one guy there somewhere. There, perfect. So I know it's lunchtime very soon. We're not far away from that, but yeah, at least I want to tell you a few things about Nuxt.js. And I mean, early in the morning and yesterday, a bit later in the evening, we've seen a lot of amazing things there, right? So we're kind of already knowing what. Might need a different screen here, though. What's going on with Nuxt.js? Nevertheless, I want to see who of you is actually using Nuxt.js in production. Who of you? Hands up. Okay, yeah, couple of people here. Couple of people, that's great. So I still think I need a little adjustment to get the other one up and running. Like just perfect. In the meantime, it's great to see that so many of you use Nuxt.js in production, and that means you know a lot of it already. Like you know how to build amazing applications with it, you might use it every day. And who of you has not used Nuxt before? Just like, that's fine, that's no problem. Okay, let's see, even after Daniel's talk, you might be, okay, maybe trying out a few things. And perfect, thanks. So we're getting into that. But the best part is that not really. We'll try, we'll manage. That there are a few things that not every Nuxt developer might know about. So like some kind of gems of Nuxt.js. And now you might wonder, okay, but it's all open source, right? We'll all dive into that. And it's very funny because I try to give the talk at a few conferences. It's getting super hard because all the things are getting more and more documented, right? It's everything that gets picked up, and I was like, no problem. Someone in the community comes like, yo, let's do that. Let's cover it. But just a few words about me before we dive into the gems. A little bit of live coding. I'm Alex. I'm a web engineering consultant. I'm obviously also speaking at conferences, right? Giving some workshops, and I also have a podcast. I sadly forgot the name. Maybe some of you remember that. Yeah, okay, getting the joke. I see. Yeah, also on the Nuxt team, of course. Amongst Daniel, Lucy, a lot of other amazing people bringing that meta framework up to work and shine. I have a few social media accounts, of course on Blue Sky as well, and I hope some of you also migrate over. If you haven't yet, follow the wonderful starter pack. I do some YouTube videos, some of you might have seen before, and every now and then also some live streams, right? And of course, there's a website, there's GitHub, with an open source, right? So, about Nuxt. From all of you, I need a little drum roll. Can we get a little drum roll, please? Like, yeah, lovely. And we all know Nuxt 4 release is still pending, but you've seen it. You can opt into the good things already today. If you didn't miss it yesterday in the evening, there's this wonderful simple flag that you can just use, right? Compatible version 4, not true, and it should be number, not a string, very important. And for those of you who say like, okay, I start a new project, I don't want to bother with the Nuxt free things, just opt in straight away. There's also this. npx nuxi init-t v4compat. So npx, well, we have to execute something. Nuxi, our wonderful CLI, init for initialization of a project, then the -t saying, oh yeah, let's use a template, which is the v4 compatibility template. And even if you go to the website called nuxt.new, we should also have that documented or also in documentation. So you can start with a wonderful new project with these breaking changes already. You can also give a nice alias like N4 to just get started, of course. And with that, we've seen it as well, that new folder structure comes, right? So we maybe have something like that. Maybe some of you have these kind of folders in your application, maybe less, maybe more. And well, there's not that much happening, right? We just, bloop, change a thing. Not too crazy, right? You see, oh, there's that app folder, wonderful. One of the breaking changes, but also features. But yeah, there's even one more thing. Maybe some of you have seen that yesterday. There's this folder. If we just collapse everything, we have like app, we maybe have modules for your custom Nuxt modules, we have layers to use Nuxt layers, public folder for your public assets like fonts, images, server folder. So we squeeze in this little thing, right? Shared. to make sure, okay, if you have utilities that are available, should be available on the server and also on the client, so on the Nuxt part and also on your Nitro part, so they're contextless. They're not a Pinia store, which never should be part of the server folder, right? Don't do this, folks. Or, I don't know, a helper from H3 or from Nitro should not land in your actual Nuxt code. So if you have something classic, I want to format some strings, some time, maybe some types you want to share, that's the way to go. You can easily do that with the shared folder. And the best part is, if you have these contextless things, right, we even give you one more thing that's super helpful. There is something called import protection. So you actually can't import a Vue component. You can't just accidentally import some helpers because it's like, hey, look, when you build the whole thing, when the bundler is doing stuff, no, there's a plugin saying it's not okay. That won't work. So we basically make sure that you really keep these things contextless and use it what it's there for. So we worry from some foot guns. Because of course, if there's like a shared folder, why not just like stuff everything in? Tricky. And of course, there's some auto imports. Who of you is a big fan of auto imports? Oh, I see a few hands here. Oh, we have to talk later. Let's do the other way around. Who's not a big fan of auto imports? It's like, too much magic. And who's like, I don't care, I want some lunch? Okay, I see, I gotcha. So that's straight away auto import. Of course, you can just import it with a hash shared alias, so you don't need these auto imports. And it works in a wonderful Nuxt VueConf mode. Okay. And if you say, yeah, but you know, the Nuxt 4 thing, we've seen it today, we've maybe seen a little bit yesterday, we didn't migrate yet, there's a feature that you can, of course, use already. So let's come to the next little gem, so to say, and it's called get cache data. So if we say we have a request, right, use Nuxt app, we do something with that in a little bit, so we don't need that usually. We have this wonderful use fetch part, right? And please don't do production, right? Just don't smash any in there, use proper types, right? We all do that, I guess. We fetch a joke, wonderful. So let's have it in a component. Then commonly you say, okay, great, I fetched a joke, I get a wonderful dad joke, and it's a random one, like it's coming again and again. If you say, okay, I don't want a random one all the time, what can you do? You would start with maybe, yeah, that's great, that's fine. Why not just putting in like local storage or server-side rendering? Also tricky. And also it's a lot of custom code, so why not doing something else? And the best part is that there is a lower level option to do that, and it's called get cache data. So here we come to use that Nuxt app part here, where we basically say, okay, we have the Nuxt app, and then very low level, we use the data that's already available in one of these objects. The good part is, if we return undefined or null in Nuxt 3, Nuxt 4 is only one of them, then it will be just fetched, right? If that function returns any data, it will be taken, and otherwise it will be fetched. And now we wonder, okay, yeah, it's a bit of code, and what if I want to have more customizable behavior, right? To say, let's do some time to live. Let's see, this data should be cached on the client side, right, until a hard refresh for 10 minutes. Then we can even do that with a little bit more code. So bear with me, yeah, it's a bit longer, don't worry. What we do here, we have this wonderful useFetch function. Necessarily have to wait, but if you want to do something with the data in the script setup, then we have to. We have this transform part here, and we say, okay, whatever comes back, we'll take that, right, spread it into an object, and then we add a fetched at. So just saying, okay, when was that data fetched? If your API provides that, it's all good, but as we deal with a third-party API, right, it's not my joke site, I wish, but sadly it isn't. We have to just add it ourselves. So we add that, and now we get to the code of get cache data. And yeah, it's a bit lengthy, bear with me. So we get our data as before, and then, as someone who wrote this code nicely commented, if the data is not fetched yet, so if it's falsy, right, in this case, let's just fetch for the first time, so we just early return here. If, once again, there's nothing, right, there's nothing returned, use fetch will just trigger the request. And then the other check comes, the other, well, not so heavy path, the exception, if the data is too old. So how do we check that? Well, we check the expiration date, so we get data fetched at, and in this case, we wrap a new date. We then say, sure, let's set the time to 10 minutes from now, and then we should just check, okay, is it expired or not? And if it expired, we return the whole data, not at all. If it's not expired, we're fine, we return it. So in this case, this special case here, in line 26, we say, oh, data is there, but throw it away, refetch it, and otherwise, we'll go for it. So if you need caching on the client side, so no server routes, nothing involved, no API, and you can do it with any kind of data, that's your way to go. But now you might wonder, okay, this seems a bit lengthy. This seems a bit like there could be a better solution. And that's true. So we're working also on some composable caching utils. So instead of writing all that, you could just say something like cache TTL 10,000, for example, or 10 seconds, whatsoever. So you can easily define it. That's work in progress. There's an issue in GitHub to follow along there. But it's definitely something that would be nice to see. Then you can add also other code for caching. Plus, it's very declarative. And if you don't use it, it's not part of your bundle, right? So you have no performance downside if you don't use it at all. And of course, if you need that, right? If you say, I need caching on the client, but also on the server, there's something else, right? We can use Nitro. We've seen that in the live coding as well, to do some caching, to even do a little backend for frontend. So Nitro itself, the server engine, you can even just build a standalone service if you need, or with Nuxt together a full stack application. That means you can even, a little bit like we did, kind of wrap your existing API, but not on the client side, but on the server side. So you could just say, okay, I have a backend somewhere, like can be Laravel, can be Django, can be Java, or I don't know, Perl. Hopefully not, but yeah. And you can still wrap and say, okay, I call it, I even transform the data as I need it. I cache it, like I store it somewhere to make sure it's performant, especially if it powers all our applications. It's very general purpose. It's great. And you also get that end-to-end type safety to make sure, okay, your Nitro API routes, well, Nuxt knows about that. So that's awesome. Plus, the storage of it is great. Also, it's something we've seen before to make sure, great, we can store it on Cloudflare KV, we can store it in a file system wherever you want it. And if there's like, oh yeah, we have this weird requirement, that's probably not supported by the library, well, just write your own driver. It's not that complicated, actually, because first, there are a lot of examples for all the other things that are supported, and there are just a few methods you have to support. So if you really come to the point, and same comes to deployment, we have that really weird target, with that really weird provider, then you can easily say, okay, based on the node server provider, let's do something, but add a little script in between to make sure all these things run so our crazy requirements are fulfilled. And that's also a bit of the idea, right? We want to have the whole thing to be extensible, pluggable, and make sure that everything works to your needs. That's nothing that belongs to the core necessarily, but more giving you the option to extend these things. And if we build, you know what? Let's do some live coding. Let's give that a try. So if we, here we go. If we build, it's too big, it's too small. Can read that? Fine. The last row, yeah, hands. Okay, perfect, good. So if we read it, of course, let's just ignore that GitHub part here. This is a tiny application I've built beforehand. Like I migrated even over from a framework called Next.js, maybe some of you know, over to Nuxt. We can do a few things. Like we can just say, like, okay, we have a server API here, right? We just create a new file. We can call it somehow, I don't know, directors.ts maybe. Yeah. So we can then say, let's do a Nitro event handler. For that, I usually have a little snippet built in. Also very simple, you can do in your VS Code. So say, okay, there's this definition, and I just return 1, right? Pretty straightforward. Now if we go back and make sure, okay, let's actually see what's happening there. We can say, okay, let's go to localhost 3000 /API /directors. And we see this. 1. Wow, amazing, crazy. Groundbreaking, earth-shattering, I know. The best part is, now we can of course say, you know what, let's just change it from defined event handler to defined cached event handler. And awesome, now we have this new object and say, you know, in here we can just define an object and say, hey, why not set the max age to something? Why not say, okay, we use SWR to make sure that you always get the cached entry and will be revalidated in the back of the server without sending it straight to the user, so they might get a little older data, but it's still super fast, and so on, so on. We can all do that. But the better part is, now we might say, like, yeah, wait, but caching the whole request isn't that good. I wanna log stuff, right? I want to track some errors, which you can do in plugins, but still. I want to do a lot of things around that. Maybe have an authenticated user. I don't want to cache these requests necessarily from top to bottom. But then you can do also something else. So you can say, why instead of caching the whole thing, so we can just say, okay, let's bring back the Nitro event handler, we can define a function, even outside of this, say const a, and we can say define cached function. So this works the same way like the event handler, literally, except that you can just define a normal async function like querying API, right? Just say like, okay, oh, my user always gets some data that's really independent, but it's still needed. Perfect. There you go. You can also throw it into utilities and cache that away. So parts of requests are cached, parts are just always executed. And once again, the results can be stored wherever you want. So that's kind of handy, right? So the whole caching part is pretty amazing. If we now go back to our Nuxt config.ts, we actually have a few more things that we can do, because we can also, of course, do caching through the route rules, right? So even here, we have a few options, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. The better part is, if you have that API route, so let's just go to directives once again, directives.ts, and say return Nuxt v directives, question mark. Let's see where that will happen. No, of course, it's all just a joke. Winky face. What we want to do is sometimes saying, okay, it's great that there's end-to-end type safety, but why not have an open API spec for that generated, so other people can use the API too? Maybe it's standalone, not even built in with Nuxt, because all the things happening in the server folder, no problem. We can also have that standalone. And then we can say, okay, you know what, Nitro as a key, or in the Nitro config, it's straight away there. We have a few things like in experimental there too, and there's open API, and you set that to true. Also, once again, what a surprise, right? So you set that to true, and then if you actually will hit the API endpoint for that, then give me a second, it's refreshing. Then we'll actually see the wonderful definition for Swagger, for example, and that will nicely work out of the box. If that would actually load. But let's see, any errors in the server? Nope. Ha, there we go. Let's just quickly restarting that. Nope, not opening that because we have that already, and just do a pm dev and see where this is going. So in the meantime, while the server is restarting, I'll show you the results in a second, we can just look at the slides for that, right? So the open API specs, let me move that along again, or go here. We can auto-generate that by setting it, and then the whole team can use it. We can operate on it, and things will easily work once again out of the box, even if you don't use Nuxt.js but play Nitro. Now I see the time is passing a little bit, so I'll defer showing that in a second. Route rules, another thing. You can change the rendering modes per route. Now you're like, rendering modes, we only want to build an SPA, we don't need SSR. Even better, because then you just say, you know what, let's disable that. In comparison to other meta frameworks, we can just say SSR false, and the whole thing will not be SSR'd at all. But if you want to, you can still use Nitro. So that's also another thing. You can build a plain SPA. You can say I have an SPA, but still Nitro running, either externally or in that application. So you still run some server middlewares and some stuff there. And you can do a lot of other things as well if you prefer that. So another thing you can always do is you can apply caching, right? So it's like why we did this just in the Nitro part. You can also do it for Nuxt pages, of course. You can set up redirects, define headers, proxies, and so on, so on. So even custom route rules are possible. Some modules do that, right, for OG image generation, for SEO. That's all a thing. Good. Now, let's talk for 1 second about the Nuxt.config.ts. And I'll be like, Alex, what's wrong with you? We all use that config file if we use Nuxt.js. This can't be like a secret thing to see. That's true. But this part is, make it environment aware. So if you say like, okay, I need some caching, only in production, right? Dev mode, no, let's not enable that. A different API URL development, there are a couple of ways to do that, but if you want to put it in, it's not a problem. Or maybe just different settings for different environments. And I'm not talking about node env, it's not a problem. This looks like that. Very simple. We have some config beforehand, that's the default, and then we say $production, and then we say route rules that the API should be cached with a max age of 60. In development, please only set that head title, so maybe, I don't know, you know the difference between your prod and your dev environment, and you're not accidentally, I don't know, delete the important user in the wrong tab. Never happened to me, of course. Yeah, and even custom envs are supported, so you can say $env, and then you say something like, oh yeah, for staging, set that. that title there. And you can then easily just run something like Nuxt dev -- env name, and then say it's the name staging, or the name is your custom thing. And everything that comes everything that's outside of these wonderful objects, of course, all still full type safety, is applied, and then the env-aware things are applied on top. So if you have a very common scenario of like, okay, I want to cache all the data, we've just seen with defined cache event handler, that's great, but maybe you don't want that in staging, so you can apply that and change it around. And some of you counted how many were are already? No? Well, almost at the end. Bless you. We talked a little bit about OG image generation. Now I'm like, okay, if I have an SPA, it might not be that interesting, but actually it is. And there's a wonderful module by Harlan. You should check out nuxtseo.com for everything SEO related. So you can actually generate OG images on the fly to say, okay, I serve my application and I want to have a custom image with my title of my blog post and some tags, or I don't know, the current time, or whatever you want to. And you can all generate these pretty easily through Vue components. That's the best part. You don't need to learn any kind of unknown syntax or complicated things. You can just use this with Vue components. You can also preview this in the DevTools. And the best part is if you say like, okay, I'm no designer, like I really am not, my designs are tricky, why not use a screenshot of the site? It's also possible with just a Chromium render that walks through it, screenshot, it's great. And you can also have that on build time, so you can do that. It's a lovely feature. It's not in the core, you have to install a module for that. But the best part is exactly that. If you don't need it, if you will, for example, plain SPA, it might not be necessary at all. And now the eighth one. And it's once again something that's not that obvious. Nuxt dev. You're like, wait, we use that. Once again, what's the thing here? And the thing is not about the command itself, right? It is not, right? We all have that in our package JSON if you use Nuxt. But it's all about the arguments here, right? I'm not talking about directives versus Nuxt.js, once again. It's not about these arguments, it's about the arguments of that command. You can enable local HTTPS out of the box if you need it for your use case by just passing --HTTPS. You can provide even your custom cert and key, straightforward. Also, if you just want to open it, very common thing, okay, I start my dev server, then why not opening it straight away when the whole thing's running, so I really don't use the production tab, hopefully, sure. And with a simple argument, you can even share the whole thing with the internet to show like, hey, I built this cool feature. Instead of saying it's on localhost 3000, you say like, hey, this is on that wonderful Cloudflare tunnel, and share it with your clients, with your friends, just as a preview. Please don't use that for production, of course, especially not with Nuxt dev. And if you say, okay, why not adding a QR code to that? Yeah, you can do that, then people can scan it and open that. I would do it right here, but yeah, a bit scared. So there are also more arguments to explore there. So more flags you can pass in, and it's really, really powerful. An env name flag that I mentioned before for the env or Nuxt config feature, and so on. And if you think, okay, there might be something missing, well, is everything open source? Just raise an issue with why need certain things. And here we go. We could also talk about like, yeah, how does the end-to-end type safety work, or dive even deeper into like the whole full stack part, or auto imports, but I don't want to keep you from lunch because some of you were very hungry and asked. So I just ask, are you ready for more? Then feel free to follow along. I have a YouTube channel, as mentioned before, 1 video a week. Next one actually coming in 2 days about rendering multiple Vue components, or like having multiple Vue components in one file. Where you're like, hey, wait, it's a single file component. What's the idea behind it? You'll see. And otherwise, there's a podcast called Deja Vu that Michael, who talked yesterday, and I do together every week. So also check that one out. Next episode about error handling, very important. Thank you, dear sponsors, right? On GitHub, thanks to all the YouTube channel members as well for supporting me. It's been a bit of open source in the content. I want to thank you for your attention. Thanks, everybody.